So like Jay, look, Jay and I came into our seats as business people that were not professional politicians stepping into these two agencies. And we came at a unique time in the development of this new innovation, which I think is much more than crypto. I think it's a whole new architecture, an internet-based architecture of finance. And we had to grapple with these existing statutes, this existing Washington institutional rivalry with securities laws and commodities laws that were written in the 1930s for an analog personal world. And we had to grapple with it as best we could. And I think it's incumbent upon regulators to grapple it. But ultimately, the United States needs to stop being an outlier and do what Europe is doing what Japan is doing what Brazil is doing, and that is come up with a bespoke regulatory framework for crypto that builds upon the antecedents, but recognizes the unique aspect of this innovation, and that, at least in my view, what we have is not adequate for an entirely new architecture of finance, an internet-based architecture of finance, where value will no longer be held in the silo of a proprietary institution, but lodged on a blockchain, whether that value is in title to an automobile or your retirement money. That's a whole different framework, and we need a bespoke.
And when you say blockchain, you're speaking broadly. It
I mean,
necessarily have to have a blockchain.
No. Blockchain has become like Kleenex. It's exactly. I mean basically. Okay. A digital network, private or public.
So we touched on this briefly, and we're going to get on this CBDC stuff because it's so amazing, but I want to stick with this for a little bit longer. So I don't know, I've met Russ, and I've met Gary on a couple occasions, but they're not friends of mine. As you know, with the FTX proposal for real-time margining, the CFTC, he and I spent an hour talking about that, and they were very close to kind of pushing that forward, which would have been, an absolute disaster. But what I want to talk about is, and we briefly mentioned this before we walked in the room, what you said about, do they become decentralized enough not to become a security? It's all about the issuance, isn't it? Like, once a security, always a security. And Jay, maybe you touch on that.
I don't know that once a security. Like the ticket example is a good one, right? There's a security. One of the things I think people miss in this whole classification debate about securities and commodities and what's a security and what's not, is there is a different regulatory framework for the issuance of securities. When I have all of the information about my company, my project, and I'm issuing it to the public, versus the trading of securities. Now we rely on that issuance architecture to support the trading regulation of securities. Chris's point about decentralization is when things become decentralized, you don't have that issuer architecture for trading. But there is lots of trading of securities. There's lots of trading of commodities that happens not on regulated exchanges. Most of the fixed income market trades off exchange, trades very efficiently. So a lot of this debate misses these nuances. And these nuances have built up because, we do have $150 trillion of securities assets operating through the marketplace. There's plenty of room for nuance. One of the things that's been difficult here is people haven't wanted to address that and deal with this. But what I will say, David, and Chris, to your point is, to me, dealing with that is something we're going to have to do. Regulation is not going to change. It's just not. It takes too long. Private sector is going to need to come to grips with that. But what the regulatory sector needs to come to grips with is we are going to have interoperability. What we have learned from distributed ledger, what we've learned from these things is we are going to have programmable assets that operate much more efficiently with each other. That's going to happen.
Which is a big theme today. So that's that's very convenient. And as you know, I used to run BrokerTech, which is the largest treasury platform in the world. And treasuries are, of course, securities, but they're traded OTC like so many others. So that is that's an important difference. But certainly there's been a lot of fraud. And when we think about what I tell people all the time is that I think folks underappreciate how long the regulatory regime has developed. It hasn't been decades. It's been over 150 years. So